Welcome back to Perfectly Proofed. Today, we're going to do an apple pie. My homie and extremely talented pastry chef, Roy Smith, taught me how to do this quite a few years ago. And I've been doing this apple pie ever since. The baker and cooking me are like constantly at battles because I don't have any like measurements for this. I just kind of eyeball it as a cook would. So a few things we need. We need a large bowl. We need a stock pot or a large pot to cook all of our apples down. We need cloves, nutmeg, allspice, cinnamon, salt, brown sugar, butter, and flour. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, and I'll bring that up later when I figure it out. So go ahead and pick your favorite apple. Doesn't have to be Granny Smith. Granny Smith are great because, you know, they're sour tart that goes well with like sugar and spices. But if we back off on the sugar, we can use like Envy or like Jonathan apples. That's the thing. Honeycrisp, whatever your favorite is, because we're cooking it down and not baking it down. It's not going to be like mushy like it would be if we baked it down. Now, a few people might ask, like, why are we going to cook this down versus baking a pie like a lot of people do? It's because if you bake your pie with apples that are raw, all of the water is going to bake out of them and make your pie dough like really soggy, and your pie dough is going to fall apart, like not pick up your pie with all your apples, right? Which is what we want. Also creates like it cooks in a lot of the spices and flavors that we want into it, and really holds that nice like dome over the pie versus when you bake raw apples, it just like flattens out. So now that we got our apples ready to go, we need to peel them. Things on peelers. This is the only peeler you need. If you have an old like long one, just throw it away. You don't even need it. These are 3 for $2. Everybody in the industry uses these. I'm sure millions of people would back me up if I had followers. So you should follow me. That'd be cool. So the first step is to peel our apples. So I have a little trick for this. Go ahead and take your thumb and hold the stem, right? And make one first little peel. And then from there, we can get into it. And that thumb on the stem really helps create some traction and grip so it doesn't fall out of your hand, especially after we get a lot of this peel off and it gets a little slippery. It doesn't have to be perfect. If there's a couple little slivers of skin on there, that's fine. And then just take your, I guess we don't have to because we're going to cut it out. But let's go ahead and peel all of our apples. I'm pulling towards me, right? And then spinning. So you get that nice long peel, right? Sweet, now that our apples are peeled, we're going to cut them in half and core them. Okay, after we cut our apple in half and core it, if you have a melon baller, that would be the best. But if you don't, a teaspoon will work. But make sure it's like a sturdy one and not just a really flimsy one. And I'll demonstrate that right now. Okay, so we're gonna cut all of our apples in half. Some apples are a little bit wider one way, and it would make it easier on you if you cut it that way, so like that. If we leave all of our apples facing up, we won't miss any. Trust me, it happens more often than you think. So we take our teaspoon, right? And we just, right? And then if we have the stem and the butt, there we go. So once again, in, round, core, right? And one more time. So with the seeds. Right. But like I said, a melon ball is just gonna... Now cutting our apples is key too, so we don't want them really thin, right? So I like to cut them about that thick, so that way they're thick enough to cool down, to cook down, that they're not gonna get mushy. There's some girth to them, and it will definitely help you out. So if we cut them like that, too thin, they're gonna get mushy, and it's not gonna turn out the way you want it to be. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Look, like there's a thin one. You're fine. Now that we got all of our apples, slice them into our bowl before they oxidize and brown. We want to get some lemon juice on there. So I don't know, about tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. If you have a full lemon, I would just squeeze the full lemon in there, to tell you the truth. Go ahead and... I want to say it's about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoon and a half of cinnamon. Yeah, sure. Looks about right. Pinch of salt. I like cloves, so maybe let's say a half teaspoon. We just need a real, just a dash of allspice. Woo! A little more than that. And nutmeg. About, I don't know, half teaspoon. We're going to toss this all together. Cool. Now that everything is all coated, looks nice, I'm going to take 3/4 stick, so like 3 ounces of butter, throw it in my pot, and we're going to melt this and toss our apples in there and cook them down. So let's do it. Okay, now that we got our butter melted and hot, we're going to just pop our apples in. Make sure we're stirring occasionally. I have the heat on medium-low. As we can see, they don't we're looking for a bend. They're also hot. So we're looking for a bend with a snap, and that's too much of a snap. It doesn't bend enough. So we're gonna let it cook for a little while longer. So now that my apples are about halfway done, I'm gonna add my brown sugar in. And I wanna say this is about 1/3 of a cup. We're gonna go ahead and mix this in. As you can see, look how much liquid is baked out of here. This is all the water from the apples and our butter. But this is why we cook our apples down instead of baking them raw. So it's been about 15 minutes. So we're gonna check it again. Ooh, yeah, see the bend? But it still snaps. Bend and snap. So it's been about 16 minutes and I think my apples are done. So we're gonna take them off the heat and we're actually gonna strain out all this liquid now. So let's do that. Okay, now that our apples are done, we have to strain them. So I just retain the same bowl I used to mix them. And we need a strainer. So the reason why we want to do this is we're going to cook our liquid down. We're going to reduce it and all the good flavors in that liquid. So we're going to make it into more of a roux after we cook it down, because it's just going to be butter, a little bit of water, spices, and then we're going to add flour to it to really thicken it up, and then re-toss our apples back into that. Now we're going to add our liquid back to our pot. Okay, we need a whisk for this next step. As you can see, there's a couple bits of apple in here, and I'm not too worried about that. But if you have more liquid than this, don't worry about it. Some apples are going to have more water content than these did. So we're just going to reduce it just slightly. As you can see, I don't have very much, so I don't need to reduce that much. But I still need to cook out some of this water before I add my flour. As we can see, brought it to a little bit over a boil. We want to add our flour just slightly at a time, so that way it doesn't clump. We need to cook it down. Just a little more, and I'm only taking a pinch full at a time. You can see our sauce is really thickened up here. And that's it. That's it. Now we're gonna bring this back to our apples and toss our apples back in this. Okay, so just return your liquid back to your apples. We really just want to reincorporate our apples back in this. This is what's going to bind everything together. Cool. So this next step, we need to let this cool, because if we bake it now, since that sauce we just made, it's just going to run all the way down to the bottom. So we really want all of our apples to hold this sauce and coating. So normally I make this the day before and let it set up in the refrigerator overnight. If you don't have that time, just just put it in the refrigerator and let it set up. So maybe like 3-ish hours, but just really until this sauce sets up. And then we can bake it from there. While waiting, this is the time I normally make my crumb topping, if you're gonna use a crumb topping over a pie topping. So I'm gonna do that now. Unlike my pie filling, I actually have a recipe for my crumb topping. So it's 2 cups, which will obviously be in the box below. It's 2 cups of AP flour, 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, pinch of salt, about a tablespoon of cinnamon, and I start with a half a stick of butter, but usually it goes to about 3/4 stick of butter. So once we got our dry all in, we're just going to mix it together. Make sure we incorporate that baking powder. And then we're going to go 2 eggs. I really like to work the eggs into the flour. Okay, so we can see. Got a lot of clumps here, but that's fine. Like I said, I start with about a half cup. Now this looks great. We don't want to overmix this and make it into one big glob or like a bunch of like one dough, right? So it's all crummy right here, and this is gonna just bake up perfectly on top of our pie. So I'm gonna hold this until we pop this until our filling's ready. Okay, now that our apples have cooled down, we're gonna pop them inside of our pie shell. And if you want, you can put a pie dough on top, but I prefer crumb topping. So we're going to pop this into our oven at 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes and then check on it. Let's see if a little bit more. Cool. All right, so here we go. Mine took about 35 minutes at 350. The best way we can tell is that it's like one solid crumb topping, right? So our pie dough and our pie filling's already cooked, so we just need to cook this this crumb topping on top. I know it's really tempting to cut into it right now, but give it a minimum 3 hours. Personally, I'm gonna let it sit overnight. This is a great recipe to assemble at the last day, right? So we set up our pie dough, which we did in a video before. You should go and watch it. Our pie filling, we can make the day before or a few hours before, let it sit in the fridge. And also our crumb, that can sit just pretty much for quite a long time in the freezer. If you have any questions, drop them in the box below and I'll answer them. Otherwise, you should subscribe. Thanks for watching.